Most people in the town passed her without noticing. She was the kind of person who blended into the background, not because she wanted to, but because life had taught her that drawing attention rarely helped. She dressed simply, spoke politely, and never raised her voice. If someone asked her how she was doing, she smiled and said she was fine. Even on days when she was clearly not. She lived in a small rented place at the edge of town. The walls were thin, the paint was old, and the windows rattled when trucks passed by. It was not a place anyone dreamed of, but it was what she could afford. Every morning she woke up before the sun, made herself a cup of tea, and sat quietly for a few minutes before the day began. That short silence was often the only calm she had. Her life followed a steady routine. She worked long hours doing work that required patience but offered little recognition. People often spoke over her or made decisions without asking her opinion. It was not that she lacked ideas or ability. It was simply that others assumed she did not have much to offer. Over time, she learned not to correct them. There was a place she visited often, a public space where people came and went all day. It was controlled by a small group who believed they understood what people wanted and needed. They followed rules closely and preferred things to stay predictable. New ideas were usually met with hesitation. Change made them uncomfortable. She had been coming to this place for a long time, always quietly, always respectfully. She followed the rules, waited her turn, and never complained. Many of the staff recognized her face, but not her story. To them, she was just another regular person passing through. One afternoon, something shifted inside her. It was not sudden or dramatic. It felt more like a slow pressure that had been building for years. She realized that if she stayed silent, nothing would ever change. Not for her, and not for anyone like her. She stood near the desk, where decisions were usually made. Holding a small piece of paper in her hand, her palms were slightly damp. She had rewritten her words many times, trying to keep them simple and clear. She did not want to sound demanding. She did not want to sound desperate either. When it was finally her turn to speak, she cleared her throat gently. The people behind the desk looked up, only half paying attention. They expected a routine question, something they had heard 100 times before. She made her request calmly. It was short and polite. She asked for a small opportunity, something that did not seem important on the surface. There was nothing dramatic about it. No long explanation. No emotional appeal. Just a simple request. The room was quiet for a moment. One of them glanced at another, then shrugged. It did not seem like a big deal. Granting her request would not cost them anything. They did not see any risk. "All right," one of them said casually. "That should be fine." The decision was made in seconds. As she thanked them and stepped away, none of them gave her a second thought. They turned back to their work, already focused on the next task. In their minds, they had just agreed to something minor, something forgettable. But for her, it meant everything. She walked out of the building slowly, her heart beating faster than usual. She kept her face calm, not wanting anyone to notice how much that small yes meant to her. Outside, the air felt different, lighter somehow. She stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky, taking a deep breath. This was not luck. This was not chance. This was something she had been waiting for. Her past had taught her to prepare quietly. Years earlier, she had learned the hard way that showing effort too early often invited doubt or judgment. So she learned to work in silence, to practice when no one was watching, to improve without applause. Back in her small room that evening, she placed her bag on the chair and sat down slowly. The room was quiet, except for distant sounds from outside. She stared at the wall for a long time, replaying the moment in her mind. The way they barely looked at her, the way they agreed so easily. Some people might have felt insulted by that. But she felt something else. Freedom. She knew exactly what she needed to do next, hidden beneath her bed, something she had kept safe for years. She pulled it out carefully, handling it with respect. It was worn, but well cared for. It carried memories of long nights, tired hands, and moments when she almost gave up. She sat down and began slowly. At first, just warming up, letting her hands and mind connect again. The movements were familiar, almost comforting. As time passed, her focus deepened. The outside world faded away. This was where she felt most alive. This was where she was honest. She practiced not for praise, but because she loved it. Because it made sense of the parts of her life that often felt heavy. Every small improvement felt like a quiet victory. Hours passed without her noticing. When she finally stopped, her body was tired, but her mind was clear. She knew she was ready, even if no one else knew yet. In the days that followed, nothing seemed different to the outside world. She still went to work, still spoke softly, still blended into the background, but inside, everything had changed. She planned carefully. Every detail mattered. She knew she would not get a second chance. This one moment had to count. Occasionally, doubt tried to creep in. Late at night, she wondered if she was imagining things. If she had misunderstood how serious this opportunity was. If she was setting herself up for disappointment, but then she remembered how easily they had agreed. How little they expected from her, that thought no longer hurt. It motivated her. She continued preparing in silence, trusting herself, even when no one else did. She did not talk about it. She did not seek reassurance. She carried the weight alone, the way she always had. As the day of her simple request grew closer, the people who had agreed to it barely remembered her face. To them, it was just another date on the calendar to her. It was the moment everything could change, and she was ready to show them that sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths. The days after her request moved slowly, yet her mind stayed busy. On the surface, nothing had changed. The same streets, the same faces, the same small routines filled her hours. But inside her, something stayed awake, like a quiet light that refused to turn off. Each morning, she still left her room early. She still prepared her tea the same way and watched the sky brighten through the window. But now, every small sound felt sharper. Every step felt more purposeful. She was no longer just moving through time. She was counting it. At work, people spoke around her as usual. They discussed plans, shared opinions, and laughed without noticing her presence. She listened politely, nodding when expected. No one asked what she thought, and she did not offer. It was easier that way. She had learned long ago that saving her energy mattered. When her shift ended, she did not rush home. She walked instead, taking longer paths, letting her thoughts settle. The town felt familiar, yet distant, like a place she was slowly outgrowing. Shops closed for the evening. Lights flickered on in windows. Life went on, unaware of what she was carrying inside. Back in her small room, preparation became her quiet ritual. She cleaned her space not because it needed it, but because order helped her focus. She moved things carefully, making room where there had once been clutter. Even the air felt different, calmer. She took out the same worn item she had hidden for so long. She checked it carefully, noticing small marks that told stories only she understood. These marks were reminders of effort, not mistakes. Proof of how far she had come. She began slowly repeating the basics again and again. Some nights, it felt easy. Other nights, frustration crept in. Her hands would pause, her mind would wander, and doubt would whisper quietly. What if this was not enough? What if she had waited too long? On those nights, she stopped, closed her eyes, and breathed. She reminded herself why she started in the first place. Not to impress others, not to prove anything, but because this was the one place where she felt honest and whole. Her past often returned in fragments. Moments when she had tried to speak up but was ignored. Times when people assumed she could not handle more responsibility. Opportunities that passed her by because she did not fit someone else's idea of potential. She remembered once being told to keep her expectations low. The person who said it probably thought they were being kind, but the words stayed with her longer than they should have. Now, those words pushed her forward instead of holding her back. As the days passed, she adjusted her routine. She slept less, but rested more deeply. She ate simple meals, not worrying about taste, only balance. Everything became about readiness. She did not share her plans with anyone. Not because she did not trust people, but because she trusted herself more when the noise stayed away. Silence had become her ally. At the place where her request had been approved, no one spoke about her. The staff followed their schedules, handled their tasks, and complained about minor inconveniences. Her name was buried under paperwork and forgotten conversations. One person vaguely remembered her face but could not recall why. Another assumed the request had come from someone else. It did not matter to them. It was not important enough to matter. That distance worked in her favor. As the date approached, her focus sharpened. She began practicing under pressure, setting limits, challenging herself when she felt tired. She knew real moments rarely allowed comfort. They demanded presence. Some evenings, the noise from outside distracted her. Voices, music. Passing vehicles. Instead of resisting it, she learned to work through it. If she could stay steady in chaos, she could stay steady anywhere. Her hands grew more confident, her movements more certain. Mistakes still happened, but they no longer shook her. She learned to recover quickly, to continue without panic. There were moments of quiet pride she did not allow herself to enjoy for long. She acknowledged progress, then moved on. Time was precious. One afternoon, while walking home, she caught her reflection in a shop window. She stopped briefly. The person looking back at her seemed the same, yet different. Her posture was straighter. Her eyes held focus instead of apology. She smiled softly and kept walking. The night before the scheduled day arrived faster than expected. She prepared her things carefully, laying them out in order. She checked everything twice, then once more. Not from fear, but from respect for the moment. Sleep came slowly. Her mind replayed possible outcomes, some hopeful, some disappointing. She allowed them all to pass without holding on to any of them. Control had limits. Effort did not. When morning came, she felt calm. Not excited. Not nervous. Calm in a way that surprised her. She dressed simply, choosing comfort over appearance. She did not want anything to distract her. She ate lightly and left early, giving herself time to arrive without rushing. The walk felt longer than usual. Each step echoed with quiet resolve. She noticed small details she had never paid attention to before. Cracks in the pavement. Birds resting on wires. The rhythm of the town waking up at the building. People moved in and out as usual. Some hurried. Some complained. No one noticed her arrival. She signed in, nodded politely, and waited. Time passed. As she sat there, she observed the room. The way people filled space with noise. The way authority often looked comfortable until challenged. She wondered how many others had been underestimated in this very place. Not a staff member glanced at a list and called out a few names. Hers was not among them. She did not react. She trusted the process even if it seemed careless. Eventually someone approached her, slightly confused, holding a paper. "You're scheduled later," they said, as if surprised. She nodded calmly. "That's fine." The person walked away without another word. She sat back down, breathing evenly. Waiting had never bothered her. She had been waiting her whole life, but this time, the wait was different. This time, she knew exactly what she was walking toward, and she was ready. When her turn finally came, no announcement made it feel important. There was no special signal, no build-up, no sense that anything meaningful was about to happen. A staff member simply called out her number in a flat voice, the same way they had called dozens before her. She stood up calmly. A few people glanced at her, then looked away. To them, she was just another face, another moment to pass. Some were busy on their phones. Others whispered among themselves. The room carried the low noise of people waiting for things they believed mattered more. She walked forward at an even pace. Not too fast. Not too slow. Every step felt grounded. Years of holding herself back had taught her how to move carefully. But today, she allowed herself to take up space. The area she was led to was simple. Nothing fancy. Just enough room to do what she had asked permission to do. The people in charge stood nearby, arms crossed, or hands resting on clipboards. Their expressions were neutral, slightly tired, slightly bored. One of them gave a short instruction, barely looking at her. She nodded to show she understood. Her voice was steady when she replied. Clear, polite, she took a moment before beginning. Not because she was nervous, but because she wanted to be present. She adjusted her posture, grounded her feet, and took a quiet breath at first. Nothing seemed unusual. The first few moments felt ordinary, almost plain. Anyone watching casually might have assumed this would be forgettable. A few people shifted in their seats. Someone near the back checked the time. But then, something changed. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was subtle. Her focus deepened. Her movements became more confident, more intentional. The uncertainty that people expected never arrived. Instead, there was calm control, the kind that only comes from long hours of unseen work. One of the staff members looked up fully for the first time. Another stopped writing. The room grew quieter. Not because anyone asked it to be, but because attention was slowly being pulled toward her. She did not rush. She did not show off. She simply continued, letting each moment land naturally. There was honesty in what she was doing. No pretending. No exaggeration. People began to notice details. The steadiness, the care. The way she adjusted when something was slightly off. Without panic or pause, a whisper started somewhere, then faded. Someone leaned forward. The same people who had approved her request without thought were now watching closely. Their expressions shifted from mild interest to surprise. This was not what they had expected. The space felt different now, heavier, more focused. Even the air seemed to settle. She remained unaware of most of it. Her attention stayed on what she was doing, on staying connected to the moment, on delivering exactly what she had prepared for, nothing more and nothing less. Her past slipped through her mind in quiet flashes. The nights she practiced alone, the mornings she doubted herself. The times she was overlooked without explanation, all of it led here. A small mistake happened midway through, barely noticeable. Most people would have panicked. She did not. She corrected smoothly and continued. That calm recovery spoke louder than perfection ever could. Someone in the front row exhaled slowly, as if they had been holding their breath. The staff members exchanged brief looks. This was no longer routine as she moved forward. The confidence in her presence grew stronger. Not loud confidence. Quiet certainty. The kind that does not ask for permission. People began to feel something they did not expect. Respect. Not because she demanded it, but because she earned it in real time. Minutes passed, though it felt shorter. The noise of the building outside faded completely. Everything narrowed down to her in the moment she was shaping. When she reached the final part, the room was completely still. No phones, no whispers. No distractions, she finished without drama. No pause to check reactions. No glance around the room. She simply completed what she came to do, for a brief second. Nothing happened. Then someone shifted in their seat. Another cleared their throat. The silence felt heavy, not awkward but full, as if everyone needed a moment to adjust their understanding. One of the people in charge finally spoke, their voice slower than before. They thanked her. The words sounded different now, less casual, more deliberate. She nodded politely, the same way she always did. She gathered her things with steady hands and stepped back. As she walked away, she could feel eyes following her. Not with doubt, but with curiosity. With something close to admiration, she returned to her seat and sat quietly. Her heart beat steadily, not racing, not shaking. She felt grounded. Around her, the room slowly returned to life, but it was not the same. Conversations resumed, but at a lower volume. People glanced at her, then looked away, unsure how to place her now. The staff members whispered among themselves. Clipboards were checked again. Notes were rewritten. The simple request they had approved without thought had just rewritten the tone of the room. She waited calmly. Knowing this was only part of the journey, She had shown them something they could not unsee, and the real impact was only beginning. After she returned to her seat, the room did not fully relax. It tried to, but something had shifted. The usual rhythm felt off, like a song playing slightly slower than expected. People spoke, but their voices carried less confidence. Laughter sounded forced. Attention drifted back to her more often than anyone meant it to. She noticed it, but she did not react. She kept her hands folded, her posture calm, her eyes lowered. Years of being unseen had taught her how to stay still without disappearing. Inside, she felt steady, as if a long-held weight had finally settled into place. The staff continued with the schedule, calling the next number, then the next. Each moment followed the rules, yet the energy refused to return to normal. Some of the staff members glanced at their notes more than before. Others watched the room, trying to read what had changed. A person seated nearby leaned slightly toward another and whispered. The whisper stopped halfway through, as if words suddenly felt unnecessary. They both looked forward again, thoughtful. She waited. Waiting had always been part of her life, but this wait felt different. It was not filled with worry or hope. It was filled with acceptance. She had done what she came to do. Time passed in uneven pieces. At some point, a staff member approached her, holding a paper. Their tone was polite but no longer casual. "Could you come with me for a moment?" they asked. She stood without hesitation. As she followed them down a quiet hallway, the sounds from the main room faded. The hallway was plain, lit by soft overhead lights. Her footsteps echoed lightly, steady and calm. The staff member glanced at her once, then looked forward again. "We just need to clarify a few things," they said. She nodded. Of course. They entered a smaller room with a table and a few chairs. 2 other people were already there, both holding documents. When they looked up and saw her, their expressions changed slightly. Curious, careful. She was invited to sit. One of them began speaking, choosing words more thoughtfully than before. They asked simple questions. Where she had learned, how long she had been preparing. Whether she had done something like this before, she answered honestly, without exaggeration. She did not sell herself. She did not downplay either. Her voice stayed calm, her tone respectful. As she spoke, she noticed something unexpected. They were listening, not pretending to listen. Actually listening. They asked follow-up questions. They paused to think before responding. One of them nodded slowly, as if pieces were falling into place. She realized then that the simple request she had made had grown into something larger. Not because she demanded it, because she had shown consistency and control when it mattered. When the conversation ended, they thanked her again. This time, the words carried weight. She was escorted back to the main room where the schedule continued. Some people noticed her return and watched quietly. Others avoided eye contact, unsure how to adjust their assumptions. She took her seat once more. Minutes later, another announcement came. A brief pause in the schedule. A need to review something. The staff stepped aside, speaking in low voices. The room filled with uncertainty. She felt no fear, only patience. When the schedule resumed, the order had changed slightly. A few people were asked to wait longer. No explanation was given. Frustration showed on some faces, confusion on others. She remained still at one point. Someone across the room looked directly at her, then quickly looked away. The glance held something close to recognition. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her past again. 2 moments when she had tried to be seen and failed, to times when she was told to wait her turn, even when her turn never came. She realized something important then. This moment was not about winning or approval. It was about alignment. About finally standing in a place that matched the effort she had given all along. Another staff member approached later, their tone careful. "There may be a short delay," they said. "We appreciate your patience." She smiled slightly. "That's fine." The words came easily. As time stretched on, the mood of the room softened. People settled into quiet reflection. Some checked their phones less often. Some stared ahead, lost in thought. She noticed a younger person across the room watching her with open interest. Not judgment. Interest. The look reminded her of herself years ago. When she searched for signs that quiet effort could still matter, she met the gaze briefly and offered a small, encouraging smile. The younger person smiled back. Eventually, the schedule came to a close. People gathered their things, conversations picking up again. Some left quickly. Others lingered, still processing. She stood, expecting to leave as well. Before she reached the door, someone called her back. This time, the invitation was different. Not casual. Not uncertain. She turned and walked back. Her steps unhurried. In the same smaller room as before, the atmosphere felt more settled. Decisions had been made. The people there spoke clearly, respectfully. They explained next steps, not promises, not guarantees. Just acknowledgement. They recognized what she had. They recognized the discipline. They recognized the quiet strength. She listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions when needed. She did not rush. She did not cling to the moment. She treated it the same way she treated her preparation, with care and balance. When the meeting ended, she stood and thanked them. The gratitude was mutual now. As she stepped outside the building, the evening air met her gently. The sky was painted with soft colors, the kind that only appear when the day is ready to rest. She paused for a moment. Breathing it in, nothing about her life had magically changed yet. Her room was still small. Her routine would still begin early the next morning. Bills would still arrive. Work would still demand patience, but something inside her had shifted permanently. She walked home slowly, letting the weight of the day settle naturally. There was no rush to celebrate, no need to tell anyone. The moment belonged to her. As she unlocked her door and stepped inside, the familiar space greeted her quietly. She placed her things down and sat, finally allowing herself to feel tired. Not the heavy tiredness of defeat, the calm tiredness of effort well spent. She knew there was still more ahead. Conversations, decisions, possible challenges. Nothing was guaranteed, but one truth was now clear. The people who had agreed to her simple request would never see her the same way again, and neither would she the days after. That evening felt quieter than she expected. There were no sudden messages, no dramatic calls, no instant changes waiting at her door. Life continued in its familiar way, steady and unbothered. She returned to her routine, waking early, preparing her tea, and stepping into the morning with calm purpose. But something inside her stayed different. She moved through her days with a new sense of balance. Not pride, not excitement, just clarity. She no longer questioned whether she belonged in moments like the one she had faced. That doubt had loosened its grip at work. People still spoke over her at times. Old habits do not disappear overnight. But she noticed herself reacting differently. She listened, she observed, and when she spoke, her words carried more weight. Not because she forced them to, but because she believed them. A few days later, she received a simple message asking her to return to the same place. No praise in the words. No apology either. Just a clear request. She read it once, then again. Then placed the device down gently. There was no rush. When the day came, she arrived early, as she always did. The building looked the same from the outside. Plain, unremarkable, but as she stepped inside, she sensed a difference in how she was greeted. Small changes. A longer look. A nod that held recognition. She was guided into a room where a few people were already seated. Their expressions were focused, respectful. They did not speak down to her. They did not speak around her. They spoke to her. They discussed what had happened that day, what they had noticed, what they had overlooked before. They admitted carefully that assumptions had been made. She listened without interruption. She did not need an apology to feel validated. Awareness was enough. They spoke about possibilities. Not promises. Possibilities. Opportunities that would require effort. discipline, and patience. She appreciated the honesty. When it was her turn to speak, she chose her words with care. She shared her boundaries, her expectations, not demands, just clarity. She explained that she valued the work itself more than recognition. The room was quiet as she spoke. They agreed, not casually, this time deliberately. The conversation ended without celebration, without dramatic conclusions, just a shared understanding that something had shifted. When she left the building, the air felt warm. She walked slowly, letting the moment settle. She did not call anyone, did not post anything. Some victories are meant to stay private. That evening, she returned to her small room and sat quietly. The space felt familiar and comforting. She took out the worn item she had practiced with for years and placed it gently beside. Her she did not begin right away. Instead, she reflected. She thought about the years she spent preparing without permission, the times she doubted herself because others did, the moments when silence felt safer than being seen. She realized something important. The simple request she had made was never really about permission, it was about readiness. In the weeks that followed, changes came slowly but steadily. New responsibilities, new expectations. People began to ask her opinion. Some listened carefully. Some still needed time. She gave them grace. She stayed consistent. She worked with focus. She prepared with the same quiet discipline she always had. Others began to notice, not just the result, but the effort behind it. One afternoon, she overheard someone say her name with respect, not curiosity, respect. She smiled to herself and kept walking. There were challenges too. Moments when progress felt slow. Times when old doubts tried to return. She met them calmly. The same way she had learned to recover from mistakes, she no longer feared being underestimated. She understood its power because it had given her the freedom to prepare without pressure. One evening, she returned to the place where it had all begun. Not because she was asked to, because she wanted to remember. She stood quietly in the same space. Now empty and still, she remembered how icily they had agreed to her request, how little they expected, and how much that had worked in her favor. She realized then that the moment she had waited for was not the one where everyone watched. It was the one where she finally trusted herself as. She left the building. She felt light, not because life had become easy, but because it finally felt honest. Her story did not end with applause. It continued with purpose. And somewhere, someone else would make a small request one day. Unaware of how powerful quiet preparation could be, she hoped they would be ready when their moment came. Because sometimes, the simplest requests carry the biggest truths. And sometimes, the quietest people leave the strongest impact.